What is going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Week 5 edition of Addy's Action, where I'm going to be going over this week's NFL main slate with a bit more of a contrarian view in mind. As you guys know, I go over each position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. I give you guys a few of my favorite plays that I believe are going to come in lower owned than they should be. But again, like I mentioned in last video, it's not going to be complete off the wall, shot in the dark GPP plays. Those are fine in large field tournaments, but for the most part, I want these plays to have some cash game playability as well. Every single week, I play a few of these plays in my cash game lineup, which just goes to show you that these plays are good for tournaments, but I just think they're going to be under owned as opposed to shot in the wall, shot in the dark, off the wall GPP plays. So, before I get into everything, just got to run through a few procedural things. First off, if you guys want to leave a like and comment on this video, not only would it mean a lot to me, and it really does mean a lot to me, seeing these numbers go up, seeing the likes go up, it means a lot to me and Christian. But just go ahead and leave a like, leave a comment on this video, and you'll be entered into winning a free NFL season pass of your choice. As you guys know, same giveaway every single week. All you got to do is leave a like, leave a comment, and it's that simple. Make sure you're subscribed, I guess, as well. So, and then we'll pick a winner. We announced that winner, last week's winner, on this Thursday Showdown video, and the winner reached out to us, and now he's part of our NFL members group. So, with that being said, it leads me into my next part, which if you guys do want to join us at locksdfs.com. Go to locksdfs.com, pick the NFL season pass. It's $99 for the rest of the season plus playoffs. The content you get is well worth it. You get 24/7 access to us, as well as access to our lock sheet breakdown, all that stuff, showdown slate written breakdown, all that stuff. It's only $99, so check that out on locksdfs.com if you want. If you want to get with us for NBA season, you're more than welcome to as well. First preseason slate of the year, and Christian already banked the GPP, so that's been going pretty well. If you're interested in that, please do check it out. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at ReallyAddy, and if you want to follow Locks, you can do so at LocksDFS. So now, with all that being said, let's jump into this breakdown. So I like to start these videos by reviewing last week's lineup. Well, not necessarily reviewing it, but just showing it, letting you guys know I am playing these guys in my lineup. I run one lineup, as you guys know. This was it in the 3-3-3 Wildcat. I took 114th, won 1,500 on 3-3-3, $333. And I do have a few of the plays that I talked about in last week's video. Marquise Brown was the cover boy. He didn't do great, but the opportunity was there. We'll get into him this week. Lamar Jackson had a big game for me. A lot of it was in garbage time, but on the contrary, he did leave a ton of points out there prior to garbage time, so could have been an even bigger week than expected. But yeah, so we're going to go over this week's plays. You're going to see some familiar faces on this week's video as you did in last week, but rightfully so. I just think they're total smash plays. But let's start at quarterback and go over who is projecting as the highest on quarterback right now. So as of now, I'm seeing guys like Deshaun Watson, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, Jameis Winston, Tom Brady. And I should mention that this week's ownership is far more spread out, at least as far as quarterbacks go, is far more spread out than what we've seen in the past. There's not one single quarterback that's sort of dominating ownership. I guess you could say Deshaun Watson is really by far the highest owned quarterback, and it makes a lot of sense. His price is fair, and this matchup is awesome. But a guy who looks a little bit overpriced on this slate, and I think a lot of people are going to think that as well, is Kyler Murray. And that, not just that, but that definitely helps in making him my Addy's Action quarterback of the week. Love this entire game, this Arizona-Cincinnati game. You just have two awful defenses and two teams that love to pass the ball. They rank first and second in percentage of plays that they're passing from. Arizona first, Cincinnati second. Both of them don't really like to run the ball too much. And that's reflected in the total. I mean, these aren't two really good teams, but you still see a fairly hefty total at 47.5, opened at 48. You're seeing some slight line movement come in on Arizona, not reverse line movement. They are getting majority of the bets. I think that's mainly because the public saw just how bad Cincinnati looked last week. But this is a real big bounce back spot for Cincinnati. If I wasn't talking about Kyler Murray as my Addy's Action quarterback, I might just be talking about Andy Dalton. But let's talk about Kyler Murray. So the important note with Kyler Murray is that Cincinnati ranks second in the league In sacks, that's been a huge issue for Arizona, just not being able to let Kyler Murray have any sort of time to throw the ball. We saw Seattle just dominate them. We saw Carolina do the same thing, sacking him, I believe, 8 times or something like that. So versus a team that struggles to generate pressure really, really helps him a lot as far as giving him time to find open receivers as well as giving him time to utilize his running ability. That running ability does matter because Cincinnati has given up the league's, I believe, 9th or 10th most rushing yards, which obviously Kyler Murray is not like a regular quarterback as far as his running ability. He hasn't shown it too much, although he has shown it a little bit more in recent weeks, which is a positive trend for his fantasy outlook. And this could definitely be a week where he showcases those legs in a big way because at any given moment, if this defense breaks down, this dude can, he can house it. He can house it. And having that from your quarterback is just ridiculous sort of upside. It's the reason I pretty much play Lamar Jackson every single week. 66 rushing yards last week. That's a touchdown right there. That's a rushing touchdown right there. And it's just sort of a given. So I think Kyler Murray can develop into that sort of play as well. And I just genuinely love his spot. And I love this spot for a few of his receiving options. I'm not going to talk about them in this video because they are coming in fairly chalky. You can check out Christian's video for that. But yeah, love the spot for Kyler Murray and a few of his weapons. So with that being said, let's jump into running back. Running back's kind of interesting because the ownership here is a bit more condensed than at other positions. Christian McCaffrey obviously is looking like the slate's highest owned player, as he probably rightfully should be every single week. But after that, in the top 5, we have Ezekiel Elliott and Dalvin Cook, both at 3rd and 5th. Scrolling down a little bit farther, we have guys like David Johnson, who I absolutely love this week. Like, absolutely love, especially on FanDuel. Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, Alvin Kamara, Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones, Devontae Freeman. But now we're getting pretty thin. And the guys I like actually haven't even been mentioned yet, or I haven't even mentioned them yet. The first guy, the high-priced guy, is going to be Leonard Fournette. And this is just sort of a workload thing. This is a guy, well, let's talk about the high-priced guy first, actually. I'll save the other guy for next. But this is a guy who's getting 90% of his team snaps, close to 100% of his team snaps, I should say. Although I should note that Raquel Armstead did get 14 snaps last week, but I believe that's more indicative of just Jacksonville's game plan. I mean, they ran the ball so much that second half versus Denver. They were just having so much success running the ball out of I believe Leonard Fournette had 180 rushing yards in the second half. So they were just sort of just going after it, and they gave Armstead more snaps because they were playing at altitude. So the commentators were talking about how Fournette, plays all the snaps, but this might be a week where he doesn't. Important note for Carolina is that they placed their top defensive tackle, Kawan Short, on the IR with a torn rotator cuff, so he'll be out for a while. We've seen this Carolina defense not be great since Kawan Short's injury. They are allowing just under 5 yards per carry as well, which is one of the worst in the league. Fournette is running a ridiculous amount of routes, like David Johnson, Christian McCaffrey-esque route running, which is huge for him. And he hasn't scored a touchdown this season. So this guy is leading the league in carries inside the 10. Or sorry, I might have that stat wrong. Inside the 20 or inside the 10. I think he's leading the league in red zone carries. Yet he hasn't scored a touchdown. So he's due for a ton of positive touchdown regression. The total on this game is low, which I think is going to keep people away from this game in general outside of McCaffrey. But also the Jacksonville side of this game is just going to be untouched. And I don't mind it at all. I think Gardner Minshew can move the ball, and I think these guys can put up some points. And yeah, I love the spot for them. It also, if you believe that Jacksonville, and this is getting really, really thin here, but if you believe that Jacksonville controls this game, I don't hate the idea of fading McCaffrey and going with Leonard Fournette, hoping that Jacksonville totally dominates the time of possession in this game like they tried to do versus the Broncos, and they did do in the second half. And if they do that, then Leonard Fournette's going to have a massive game, and it'll keep Christian McCaffrey on the sideline, a very highly owned Christian McCaffrey on the sideline. So I don't recommend fading C-Mac. Obviously, this is for tournaments, but I do think it's an interesting play if you want to. Scrolling down a little bit farther, we got news recently that Rex Burkhead was ruled out for this game, and that really makes me like James White. So he's going to be the Addies Action running back of this week. He's 5K on DraftKings, and this is a DraftKings specific play because it's point per reception, and we've seen James White just have these massive PPR games. Last week he had 10 targets, caught 8 of them for 57 yards, and put up a serviceable 14 fantasy points. He's not going to give you really any touchdown equity as far as running the ball, but he will give you some touchdown equity as far as receiving the ball. I mean, he scored one versus Miami in week 2. Obviously, anyone can score touchdowns versus Miami, but it's just worth noting that they do go to him, in goal line and red zone situations as a receiver. But the main news here, no Rex Burkhead, so he's going to operate strictly as the PPR, or excuse me, that's fantasy, but as the receiving back. And I really like that spot for him. I mean, we saw a guy like Wayne Gallman put up six catches for 55 yards and a touchdown versus the same Redskins defense. James White is coming off 52% of last week's offensive snaps, which was a season high for him as well. Sony Michel's been struggling behind a pretty banged up New England offensive line, and I think Bill Belichick knows that. Like one of the most dangerous things you can do in DFS is try to predict what coaches do. But one of the most profitable things you can do in DFS is get correct what Belichick is going to do. One of my biggest wins in DFS ever was like a 2017 or 2016 playoff game, New England versus Indianapolis. And I went double running back with like LeGarrette Blount and Stephen Ridley. And they combined for like 6 touchdowns because it was obvious that Bill Belichick was just going to hammer the ball on the ground. But everyone else had like Tom Brady in the pass game. So if you can predict what Bill Belichick is going to do, which is really tough to do, it can be super profitable. And this is a game where we saw New England struggle versus Buffalo last week offensively. And typically after games that New England and Tom Brady struggle offensively, Bill Belichick sort of just likes to rail next week's opponent. And he's got a pretty good opportunity to do that versus just an awful Redskins team that just struggles in all facets. So I think this is a game that we could see Tom Brady drop back quite a few times despite even if they rack up a pretty big lead, because they just don't feel comfortable running the ball behind this offensive line without James Devlin, their fullback, who's one of the most important pieces to their run game. So it's definitely a situation we can see Tom Brady spread it out. And if they do spread it out, I love James White to be getting a similar workload that he got last week, 10 targets for 5K. And that's pretty elite wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 usage for 5K in your running back spot. So I don't mind that at all. And I think he makes for a really interesting tournament play because he's coming in at like 2% owned. Maybe it'll go up a little bit with this Burkhead news once it, makes its way throughout the industry, but it's just too low right now. But with that being said, let's move on to wide receiver. Wide receiver, nothing else to do here but go right back to Hollywood Brown. So, he's just dominating opportunity, and that's really what you're looking for as far as low-owned wide receivers. He's getting 36% of his team's air yards and 24% of his targets with a 14.9 ADOT, which is awesome for fantasy. And then if you want to talk about his specific matchup, the Steelers have allowed the NFL's 10th most 20-plus yard completions, and Marquise Brown has drawn the league's 3rd most targets of over 20 yards. Just an awesome matchup for him. The only way that this wouldn't, that they may not connect is if this Pittsburgh pass rush, which has been dominant in the past couple weeks, has a lot of success versus this Ravens shaky offensive line and forces Lamar Jackson into, scrambling or checking down and just not giving him much time to throw deep. But even if that is the case, Marquise Brown, 14.9 ADOT is fairly high, but we've seen him run routes, lower ADOT routes that he can, break or just, pad his PPR stats. We saw him drop an end zone target, questionable drop, but I think they recorded it as a drop. But he dropped the end zone target, which would have helped his week last week. He dropped another slant over the middle, which he could have taken a long way. So definitely he's leaving a lot of points out there, and people are just souring on him over the past couple of weeks since everyone's been playing him or talking about him at least. People have soured, and I think this is the week, especially on DraftKings, because on FanDuel he's just ridiculously cheap. He's like, 5.4K or something over here. He's 5.4K over here. People are still going to play him over here, but at 5.7 on DraftKings, people are going to go other places like Larry Fitzgerald, etc. Maybe pay down. So I really love going right back to Marquise Brown in this matchup. I think it's an awesome spot for him to break a big one. And if he does, like, he only needs one play. And I love guys that only need one play to reach their value. So with that being said, let's move on to tight end. There's a couple tight ends here that I'm interested in, but let's talk about ownership first. Oh, I just realized I didn't go over wide receiver ownership. I should note Hollywood Brown's coming in at like 5% owned. The wide receivers are like Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, Will Fuller, who's a guy who people are going to pay down for as opposed to Hollywood Brown. Love Will Fuller, though. Makes a lot of sense. Fitz, Boyd, Tate, Sanders, Keenan Allen, but Hollywood Brown coming in at like 4 or 5% owned. So moving on to tight end, the guys that are coming on at tight end, we got Austin Hooper, Evan Ingram, Zach Ertz, Mark Andrews, Greg Olsen, Darren Waller, Tyler Eifert, Jimmy Graham, who's an interesting play, Jimmy Graham. But yeah, now scrolling down, we're getting to the 2% range. So both guys that I'm interested in haven't been mentioned yet. First guy I like, Dawson Knox. Makes a lot of sense in the spot versus Tennessee. Tennessee gave up a touchdown to tight ends in week 1, 2, and 3, and then gave up 9 catches and 130 yards to Austin Hooper in week 4. Just a good matchup for tight ends. Josh Allen is ruled healthy for this game, which is a pretty big upgrade to Dawson Knox. He's an athletic guy. He ran 40 routes last week and set a season high in snaps at 67%. 3.1K, I think you could do a lot worse. And then even cheaper than him is Noah Fant at 2.8K. Surprised he's not coming in higher owned. He's coming in at 2% owned on DraftKings, which just seems a little bit low to me. This Chargers team has struggled with tight ends. They don't really have I think Evan Silva had a good quote. He called him safety disabled. And I think that's a pretty good quote for them. They've just been struggling to cover tight ends with their safety. And it's just a good spot for Noah Fant here. I mean, he's ran the 7th most routes in the league of all tight ends, which is awesome for 2.8K considering he's, the 40th priced tight end on the slate. We saw this Chargers team kind of give it up to tight ends versus Houston. We saw Darren Fells score a touchdown, 5 catches, 49 yards, and a touchdown. And Jordan Akins in that same game had 3 catches for 73 yards and a touchdown. We've seen Joe Flacco target his tight ends a lot in the past, and he's done a fair share of it this year with Noah Fant drawing targets of around 4 each game. I like that to increase as the season goes on. Now, I love banking on just like athletic, talented tight ends, and getting Noah Fant at 2.8K. It makes a ton of sense to me in this spot. I'm definitely going to be a place that I'm looking for value, considering that there's a lot of places to pay up for on this slate at QB, running back, wide receiver, etc. It makes a lot of sense to come cheap here with a guy like Dawson Knox or Noah Fant. So, with that all being said, guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. As always, we do run that same giveaway. All you got to do is leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe, and you'll be entered into winning a free season pass of your choice. Or I should say free NFL season pass. You could choose NBA if you wanted to as well. But just make sure to do those 3 things and you'll be entered into that giveaway. And yeah, with that all being said, I hope you guys run good for week 5. I hope you guys win a lot of money. And I will see you back here for week 6. Peace.